I have spent most of my life watching people look for a rule that would save them from thinking. They want one answer that works in every case. They want someone to tell them, always pay off debt first, or always invest first, and then they can stop wrestling with uncertainty. It is a very human desire. Rules are comforting. Arithmetic is not. Life is not. And money, when it is tied to fear, family, pride, and sleep, is almost never as simple as a slogan. If you want my view, here it is. The question is not whether debt is evil or investing is noble. The question is where each dollar in your life can do the most useful work with the least chance of destroying your future. That is a capital allocation question. And nearly every financial mistake I have seen begins when people stop treating it as 1A. Great many people are not ruined by low income. They are ruined by bad sequence. They solve the wrong problem first. They chase a higher return while a guaranteed loss is burning under their feet. Or they attack debt so aggressively that they never build the habits, reserves, or emotional stability required to become investors. In both cases, the arithmetic matters, but the order matters more. I like simple ideas when they are true. High-interest debt is usually a fire. You put out fires first. If you owe 20% on a credit card, you do not have an investing problem. You have a bleeding problem. You are not in a position to daydream about long-term average market returns while a guaranteed 20% drag is chewing through your income month after month. You are standing in the rain holding an umbrella full of holes and asking whether the sun might come out next year. The world is full of people who want to make personal finance feel sophisticated. They want to compare charts, argue about tax efficiency, debate allocation percentages, and admire the elegance of compounding. I enjoy compounding as much as anyone. It has been the central force in my life. But compounding only works for money that stays alive long enough to compound. High-interest debt is a machine designed to kill future compounding before it is born. If you borrow $5,000 on a credit card at rates that hover around the 20s, you can lose more than $1,000 of interest in a year without buying a single additional thing. That is not an abstract problem. That is your future being sold in pieces. If you are carrying a personal loan at 12%, the same logic applies. The exact number may differ. The principle does not. A guaranteed negative return that large is a terrible investment, and many people call it normal only because the bill arrives in the mail instead of on a stock ticker. That is why I have never had much patience for romantic thinking about debt. Debt is not automatically foolish. Used carefully, in the right structure, for the right purpose. It can be a tool, but expensive debt is not a tool in the hands of most households. It is a lever pulling against them. It turns small mistakes into durable ones. It takes money you have not yet earned and hands control of it to somebody else. It narrows your options. It reduces your margin for error. And it does all of that with a certainty the stock market never promises. People often say they want to get rich. What they usually mean is that they want relief. They want breathing room. They want to stop feeling cornered. Expensive debt moves you in the opposite direction. It removes breathing room. It makes every future paycheck less flexible. It takes what could have become savings or an emergency fund or investment capital and chains it to past consumption. So let me make the first part of my view plain. If your debt is high interest, your first job is not to optimize. Your first job is to survive well. You attack the expensive debt with seriousness. You stop pretending you can outrun it with market returns. You stop flattering yourself with complexity. You stop calling a controlled burn a strategy. You eliminate the thing that is charging you a rate you would never accept as an investor. But that is only the first part of the story. Because once you move away from brutal interest rates and get into the territory of moderate or low rates, the problem changes. It does not disappear, it changes. If the debt costs 4 or 5%, or something in that neighborhood, the answer is no longer obvious. This is where people get uncomfortable because they prefer moral clarity to probabilistic thinking. They want debt to be bad in every form and investing to be good in every form, or vice versa. Reality rarely offers that kind of emotional convenience. Suppose you have $10,000 of debt at 5%. Your minimum payment is $150 a month. You have another $200 a month you can direct somewhere. One path is to throw the full $350 at the debt, clear it much sooner, save a meaningful amount of interest, and only then begin investing. Another path is to make the minimum payment and start investing the extra $200 right away in a low-cost index fund. Let time begin its work immediately. When you run the arithmetic over several years, the difference between those two choices can be surprisingly small. The debt-first approach may save around $1,000 of interest. The invest while paying minimum approach may allow the investment account more time to grow. Under reasonable assumptions, those effects can nearly cancel each other out. That confuses people because they expect truth to arrive with a drum roll. They want a clean winner. But a great many important financial decisions do not produce clean winners. They produce narrow ranges. And once you are in a narrow range, the most important variable is no longer spreadsheet elegance. It is human behavior. This is the part people underrate. They think money decisions are made by calculators. They are not. They are made by people who are tired, proud, anxious, impatient, embarrassed, hopeful, and often one bad month away from doing something self-destructive. If you choose to invest while carrying low-interest debt, you are making a bargain with your own temperament. You are saying, I will tolerate market volatility without panicking. I will keep contributing through uncertainty. I will not sell simply because headlines become frightening. I will not watch a 6% decline in my account and suddenly decide I was foolish to invest at all. I will remember that average returns arrive through unpleasant intervals, not around them. That sounds easy in a calm market. It is not easy in a falling market. People love to say they are long-term investors. Then the market drops, and they discover they were long-term in theory and short-term in emotion. They sell because the red numbers feel more real than the future. They retreat into cash because a guaranteed small result now feels safer than a probable larger result later. They confuse temporary volatility with permanent loss. They call the sale prudence. Most of the time it is fear with better marketing. This is why behavior matters as much as arithmetic. If you are carrying a manageable debt at a moderate rate and also investing, you must be the kind of person who can leave the investment alone when the market does what markets have always done. Broad stock markets do not move in straight lines. They have dropped hard many times across modern history and later reached new highs. That does not make every investor successful. It only creates the possibility. The actual success comes from staying in the seat when other people cannot stand the turbulence. I have often said that investing is simple but not easy. The debt versus investing problem reveals why. The simple answer is to compare costs, returns, and time. The not easy part is that you are part of the equation. Your reactions are part of the equation. Your cash flow is part of the equation. Your sleep is part of the equation. A lot of people are ashamed to admit that sleep matters. They think if a choice is not mathematically perfect, then it is financially childish. I do not agree with that at all. A household is not a hedge fund. The point of money is not to produce the most elegant chart. The point of money is to support a durable life. If carrying debt causes you persistent stress, if it gnaws at you, if it makes you feel exposed, if it increases the odds that you will panic when something else goes wrong, then the value of paying it down is larger than the interest calculation alone. There are people who can carry a low-rate mortgage or a modest loan without emotional cost. Fine. There are others who feel a burden every month. They remain obligated. Fine again. Peace of mind is not a fake variable. It is a real one. What matters is whether you are using it honestly rather than as an excuse for inertia. I have seen people insist they need peace of mind when what they really need is discipline. I have also seen people insist they should optimize mathematically when what they really need is a less fragile structure, Wisdom is knowing which mistake you are more likely to make. The structure of your finances matters enormously, and that leads to another truth that belongs near the center of this whole discussion. An emergency fund is not separate from the debt versus investing question. It is one of the decisive inputs. Many people imagine an emergency fund as cash sitting there doing nothing. They say it is lazy money. They say that if cash earns little and markets may earn more, the rational thing is to put every possible dollar to work at once. I understand the temptation. It is the kind of logic that looks intelligent right up until life intervenes. Life intervenes often, cars break, roofs leak, hours get cut, marriages break, children need help, health problems arrive without permission, jobs disappear, recessions punish industries unevenly. The odds that some version of disruption touches your life are not small. They are nearly certain if your horizon is long enough. When that disruption comes, the presence or absence of cash changes everything. If you have no emergency reserve and something goes wrong, you may be forced into the exact behavior that ruins compounding. You may need to sell investments during a bad market. You may need to go deeper into expensive debt. You may miss payments. You may take whatever solution is nearest, not whatever solution is best. In other words, you become fragile. And fragility is the real enemy here. A cash reserve does more than pay bills. It protects your ability to behave rationally when conditions become irrational. It keeps temporary problems from becoming permanent damage. It allows you to leave your investments alone. It reduces the odds that every surprise becomes a financial emergency. It acts as a buffer between real life and your long-term plan. That is why I do not think of an emergency fund as anti-investing. I think of it as part of the architecture that makes successful investing possible. 3 to 6 months of expenses is a useful starting range for many households. Some need more. If your income is irregular, if you have dependents, if your profession is cyclical, if money already makes you anxious, more cash is not cowardice. It is realism. A plan that looks brave on paper and collapses at the first sign of stress was never brave. It was brittle. I have a deep respect for systems that can survive contact with reality. That is why sequence matters. For some people, the right sequence is to build a small emergency cushion, attack high interest debt aggressively, and then begin investing with consistency. For others, especially those carrying only modest, low-rate debt and possessing stable income, it may make sense to keep the debt on schedule while starting to invest small amounts at once. There is no universal commandment here. There is only the obligation to be honest about your actual circumstances. The idea that waiting to invest has a cost is absolutely true. Time is a tremendous force in compounding. Start early enough and moderate contributions can become large sums. Contribute $200 a month over decades into a broad index fund, and the growth can overwhelm the contributions themselves. Over 10 years, the result may be respectable. Over 20, it becomes striking. Over 30, the power of the compounding starts to dwarf what you put in with your own hands. The great seduction of compounding is that it rewards patience in a way that feels almost unfair. The great frustration of compounding is that it looks unimpressive at first. For years, it can feel like you are doing the work and getting little visible help from your capital. Then, if you survive long enough, the capital begins to do more of the lifting. That is why delaying investing for too long can be so costly. You do not only lose returns, you lose years, and years are the raw material compounding consumes. But here again, there is a nuance that slogans flatten. The cost of delay is real. The cost of fragility is also real. It does not help to start investing early if your structure is so weak that you abandon the plan at the first downturn, or if expensive debt is siphoning away what should have become investable capital. You want a plan that gets you into the market and keeps you there. Both verbs matter into, and there many people are obsessed with the first and careless about the second. They feel virtuous when they open the account, make the first contribution, and declare themselves investors. Then they discovered that enduring volatility while carrying debt and having no cash reserve feels much harder than the opening ceremony suggested. They quit, they panic, they reverse course, they pay fees, they sell low, they lose confidence. Then they tell themselves investing is not for them. What failed was not investing. What failed was sequence. This is also why low-cost index funds are such a powerful tool for ordinary people. You do not need brilliance. You do not need predictions. You do not need a calendar full of market opinions. In fact, those things often make people worse investors. What you need is a vehicle broad enough, cheap enough, and simple enough that you can stay with it through long stretches of boredom and occasional stretches of fear, when debt is modest and manageable, and when your cash reserve is real, simple index investing alongside debt repayment can be an excellent path. But it only works if you understand what you are buying. You are not buying a straight line. You are buying exposure to productive businesses over time. That exposure will often look foolish in the short run and intelligent in the long run. If you cannot emotionally survive the first condition, you rarely reach the second. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that return and risk are the only two variables worth discussing. There is a third variable that deserves equal respect. It is endurance. Can you endure this plan? Can you endure the payment schedule? Can you endure the fluctuations? Can you endure the feeling of carrying debt while investing? Can you endure the feeling of missing market gains while you pay down debt first? Can you endure the slow years? Can you endure the temptation to compare yourself with people whose circumstances you do not understand? Most people do not fail because they lack intelligence. They fail because their plan requires a version of themselves that does not show up under stress. I am not interested in plans that only work for idealized people. This is where a great many advisors go wrong. They tell clients what is mathematically superior in a frictionless world. Then the client goes home to a real world filled with variable income, family pressure, sleep deprivation, medical uncertainty, job risk, and old emotional habits around money. Soon enough, the elegant plan breaks apart. I would rather own a good plan I can actually follow than a perfect plan I abandon. That is why I return so often to the idea of margin. Margin is not glamorous. It rarely makes headlines, but it is one of the great protectors of financial lives. Cash reserves create margin. Lower fixed costs create margin. Paying down dangerous debt creates margin. A life with margin can absorb surprises without wrecking the long-term plan. A life without margin must choose between bad options under pressure. Look at almost every durable fortune and you will see this principle somewhere beneath the surface. The person may speak of investing, entrepreneurship, discipline, patience, or luck. All of that matters, but hidden under much of it is a refusal to stay financially brittle. They protected their downside well enough to keep their upside alive. The ordinary household can do the same thing in its own scale. If your credit card debt is expensive, stop admiring theoretical market returns and clear the poison. If your debt is moderate, build the reserve that protects your behavior. If your debt is low rate and your income is stable, begin investing in a simple, repeatable way while honoring the debt. If the debt itself keeps you awake, paying it off faster may be worth more to you than a slightly higher expected net worth years from now. If market declines will trigger you to sell, do not flatter yourself by pretending you are more resilient than you are. Build the structure first. There is nothing shameful about tailoring the plan to your temperament. There is shame only in lying to yourself about your temperament. I have met many people who wanted a single grand answer because it relieved them of self-knowledge. But personal finance is personal, not because the arithmetic changes for each person. The arithmetic is often plain enough. It is personal because the life receiving that arithmetic is different in each case. A parent with 2 children and unstable commission income should not copy the plan of a single engineer with a secure salary and a low fixed cost lifestyle. A person recovering from years of spending chaos should not copy the plan of someone who has always been naturally calm and methodical. A household with no cash And a history of panic should not build a strategy that assumes stoic perfection. This is not weakness, it is recognition. The mature question is never simply what yields the highest expected return. The mature question is, what arrangement gives me the best odds of staying rational long enough for returns to matter? This is also why I dislike false urgency. People who have spent years making poor choices often react by trying to become financially pure overnight. They slash spending recklessly, they vow to invest aggressively, they make dramatic declarations. They imagine that intensity can replace system. Usually it cannot. What changes lives is not a week of intensity. It is a structure that survives years. You do not need to become a different species to get good with money. You need a better order of operations. You need to know which liabilities are emergencies and which are manageable. You need to know whether you are strong enough emotionally to invest while debt still exists. You need to know whether your reserve is real or imaginary. You need to know whether your plan depends on market calm, stable employment, and perfect discipline all arriving at once. And you need to know that if you cannot answer those questions, honestly, the problem is not a lack of information. It is a lack of self-confrontation. I have enormous respect for people who choose a plain path and stay with it. Pay down what is dangerous, save cash for shocks, invest in broad, low-cost vehicles, automate where possible, keep fixed obligations from swallowing the future. Let time do its part. This may not sound exciting. It does not need to. Excitement has ruined a great many financial lives. One of the reasons so many people stay confused on the debt versus investing question is that both sides can sound persuasive because each contains a truth. The debt first people are right that guaranteed high interest is destructive and avoiding it is a sure return. The invest now people are right that time and the market matters tremendously and waiting can be costly. The mistake is to treat partial truths as universal rules. You do not need a universal rule. You need a hierarchy, dangerous debt first, then resilience, then compounding, and throughout all of it, honesty. If the debt is charging 20%, it belongs in the dangerous category. If the debt is low and tolerable, but your checking account would collapse under a single surprise bill, you are not yet resilient. If the debt is manageable, the reserve is real, the income is stable, and you can truly endure market volatility, then compounding deserves a seat at the table immediately. The hierarchy is what keeps you from confusing one stage for another. This sounds simple. It is simple. The hard part is emotional. People do not like admitting which stage they are really in. They want to skip. They want to identify with the future version of themselves instead of the current one. I understand that urge. We all want to live in the better chapter before we have earned it. But capital allocation punishes fantasy. The market does not care whether you feel ready. Debt does not care whether you feel hopeful. Interest compounds without consulting your ambitions. Bills arrive on time even when your motivation does not. That is why structure beats mood. It keeps reality from depending on whatever version of yourself woke up that morning. I also think people underestimate the dignity that comes from visible progress. Paying off a toxic debt balance changes behavior, not only because it changes behavior because the person begins to believe they can direct their life. A small emergency fund can do the same thing. So can the first steady investment contribution that continues month after month without drama. Each one is a vote for order over chaos. Money is often taught as though it were a contest of maximizing every spread. I have never seen it that way. To me, money is the study of optionality. Good financial choices widen your options. Bad ones narrow them. High interest debt narrows options. No emergency reserve narrows options. Impulsive investing followed by panic selling narrows options. A sensible reserve, manageable debt, and long-term investing widen options. That is the lens I would urge people to adopt. Ask of each dollar, does this widen or narrow my future options? If you make that question habitual, a great deal of confusion falls away. A credit card balance at a punishing rate narrows the future. Pay it down. A stable reserve widens the future. Build it. A simple investment plan funded over decades widens the future. Commit to it. A lifestyle so stretched that one surprise becomes a crisis narrows the future. Reduce it. This is not sophisticated language, but sophisticated language is overrated when clarity is available. I have known people who made excellent salaries and remained fragile because they used every dollar to support a lifestyle instead of a structure. I have known others with moderate incomes who became secure because they ordered the basics correctly. They did not win by being more clever. They won by refusing to let the future be auctioned off a little at a time. That, in the end, is what the debt versus investing problem is really about. It is not about whether debt is morally bad or stocks are morally good. It is about whether you are building a life in which the future gets stronger each year rather than weaker. Every dollar you send to high-interest debt is a dollar reclaiming the future from a guaranteed drag. Every dollar you place into a durable emergency reserve is a dollar buying stability. Every dollar you invest patiently in productive assets is a dollar hiring time to work on your behalf. Put in that order, the problem becomes far less mysterious. People want a slogan because slogans absolve them from judgment. But judgment is exactly what money asks of you. What is expensive? What is dangerous? What is tolerable? What can wait? What kind of person are you under pressure? Which risks are mathematical and which are behavioral? Which discomfort now creates freedom later? Those are adult questions. They do not fit on a t-shirt, but they build lives. If I had to give you one principle to carry forward, it would be this. Do not ask whether debt is worse than investing or investing is better than paying off debt. Ask whether the order of your financial life is protecting your ability to endure. If your order is wrong, everything feels harder than it should. You are always a little behind, a little more anxious, a little more likely to do something foolish. If your order is right, progress may still be slow, but it has a quality of inevitability. You are no longer trying to win every month. You are simply making sure that each year leaves the structure stronger than it found it. That is enough. In fact, for most households, that is more than enough. The path rarely requires genius. It requires sequence, patience, and a willingness to stop pretending that all dollars should do the same job at the same time. Some dollars should extinguish danger. Some dollars should absorb surprise. Some dollars should compound. If you can learn to give each dollar its proper assignment, you are already behaving more wisely than most people who talk about money all day long. And once you do that, the old debate starts to lose its drama. You stop looking for a winner between debt and investing. You start building a life in which both are handled in their proper order. That is how capital grows. That is how peace grows. And that is how the future stops belonging to your past mistakes and starts belonging to you.